we are under glass at the Houston Astrodome for the ESPN Sunday Night Baseball Game of the Week. Tonight, the Florida Marlins, led by the National League RBI leader Moises Alou, take on the first-place Astros and slugger Jeff Bagwell on the Sunday Night Baseball Game of the Week. This is the Astrodome in Houston, Texas, where tonight the Florida Marlins meet the Houston Astros on Sunday Night Baseball. Hello, everyone. I'm John Miller. Welcome to our telecast as the Florida Marlins, second place in the East, take on the Houston Astros, who lead the Central Division. The Astros with the Killer Bees, Jeff Bagwell, Craig Biggio, and Derek Bell. They'll have their hands full tonight. They face last year's earned run average leader, Kevin Brown. Joe Morgan caught up with the Killer Bees around the batting cage.
Kevin Brown led the league in the earned run average last year. He's going for the Marlins tonight. What makes him so tough?
Keep the ball down, sinkers in, sinkers out, sliders. He just throws the ball hard, puts it where he wants to, feels his position really well. It's hard to steal on him. He's a good pitcher.
Well, I say the same thing. He's a tough pitcher. He's got a real good sinker and keeps the ball down real good. And for right-handers, you got to really get the head out because they will break your bat. He usually breaks a lot of bats.
You're going to change your approach tonight? Do you change?
A little bit. I think the home run every pitch kind of goes out the door. You're trying to make good contact and just trying to stay through the middle with him. But his fastball so good.
And with me here is Joe Morgan. And Joe, Kevin Brown, last year the ERA champion, and he just seems to be so tough, one of the top pitchers in the league. What's the best approach against him?
Well, I think the best approach is to try to make him to get the ball up. If he doesn't get the ball up, you have a couple of options. You can move off the plate if you're right-handed and also move up in the batter's box closer to him. Try to take some of the sink out of the ball. But if he sees you making all these adjustments, he's going to make some too. So they have to be subtle.
All right. Kevin Brown, he is one of the best. And Darryl Kile goes for the Astros on short rest, 3 days rest. Pretty good matchup from the Houston Astrodome, the Florida Marlins and the Houston Astros. The ESPN Sunday Night Baseball Game of the Week is brought to you by TGI Fridays Restaurants. In here, it's always Friday. Baseball under glass. The glass panels, which of course were painted over way back when here at the Astrodome, so that you can actually see a fly ball in a day game here. Here is the Pepsi Marlins batting order for Jim Leland. It'll be Kyle Abbott at second base, or rather Kurt Abbott, Edgar Renteria at shortstop, Jim Eisenreich in left field, Gary Sheffield in right field, Moises Alou is in center field. A great April for Moises, and Bobby Bonilla dropped down to the number 6 spot at third base. Conine at first base. Greg Zaun, who's had a hot couple of days, is the catcher, and Kevin Brown, one of the best in the league, is on the mound. And pitching for Houston is the 28-year-old right-hander, Darryl Kile, who also has pretty good stuff.
Yeah, it's good stuff, John, but it's interesting. He has to go on 3 days rest. They played 13 innings here last night, and Garcia was going to start today's ball game, but they ended up using him in the ball game last night, so they had to start Heil tonight. We're going to take a little different approach on our defense tonight. We're going to highlight the second baseman. I kind of like that. Craig Biggio for the Houston Astros will be at second base, and we're going to look with Kurt Abbott for the Marlins. So we're going to highlight the second base. We'll watch a few plays and just show you how difficult or how easy it is on certain nights.
Well, one thing for sure, I mean, we know Biggio is one of the best around, and in terms of Kurt Abbott, he used to be a shortstop for the Marlins. Mainly, lately, he's been a man off the bench, and Luis Castillo is getting the night off, the regular second baseman. Here's the first pitch of the night, and it is ball one to Kurt Abbott. And one of the reasons for the changes for the Marlins is the lack of offense. They've just been in a bad slump all season long. That's a high foul that goes out of play down the right field line. And the count. 1 ball, 1 strike. So Jim Leland, before the ball game here last night, decided to shake things up a little bit. And he has done so again tonight. Bobby Bonilla, the cleanup hitter, dropped to number 6. Sheffield, the third place hitter, dropped to number 4. Tonight, Eisenreich is hitting third, and then there is Abbott in place of Castillo at second base, hitting leadoff. And that fastball is in there for a called strike 2. 1 ball and 2 strikes now to Abbott. Now, just a couple of years ago, This Abbott looked like he was one of the rising young stars. He played regularly at short for the Marlins and hit 17 home runs. And they thought, man, this guy is a comer.
Well, that was the positive. He was a power-hitting shortstop.
And that's a base hit just off the glove of the diving Spires and into left field. There was part of what you're saying, though, Joe, that you sort of left unsaid there about Abbott. I mean, you gave the positive.
Yeah.
He was a good hitting shortstop.
Well, you're right.
1995, Abbott hit 17 homers with 60 runs batted in and a .255 average. That last year, not so much with the power, and of course, about a third of the way into the season, Edgar Renteria came onto the scene. It looks like he's going to own shortstop there in Florida for years to come. The bunt by Renteria. And Kile has to go to first. Bagwell covering, and over to second base goes Abbott.
It's interesting that the Marlins come out on the road and sacrifice in the first inning. We talked about the fact they have not been scoring a lot of runs. And maybe they just want to try to play some fundamental baseball for a while and see if they can jumpstart this offense. I think another positive for the Marlins, is moving Sheffield down the cleanup. That allows more runners to try to get on base in front of him, so they will have to pitch to him if they have a few men on base.
Here's the veteran Jim Eisenreich. He, too, off to a slow start with his new ball club. .225 average, and there is ball one. Nice stop in the dirt there by Eusebio. The catcher, Gary Sheffield, is on deck. And the best laid plans have not borne much fruit thus far for the Marlins. On the other hand, I guess you must be a pretty good ball club when your team's struggling. You find yourself 16-12. I mean, they're still on a 90-win pace, even with things not working all that well for them. Of course, 90-win pace is not going to be nearly good enough, I don't think, of that East, with Atlanta leading the division. And Atlanta looks like a club that could easily win over 100 games this year. Many scouts and people around the National League saying that this may be Atlanta's best team yet. And they've had some real good ball clubs the last few years. 2-0 the count. There is Abbott at second base. And a foul. Now, I guess it was a great compliment by Jim Leland to bunt the second batter of the game. A great compliment to Darryl Kile. It's almost like saying, hey, we're not going to do much probably against this guy. Kile has had a history of pretty good success against the Marlins.
It could also be a compliment to his pitcher, Kevin Brown. So if I can get you one, that may be enough.
Well, that's probably even a better point, yeah. You don't need too many for Brown ordinarily. There's a curveball in there for a strike. 2 balls, 2 strikes, the count. I mean, and that's been a problem, too. I mean, they don't need many runs for Kevin Brown, and they don't often get many for him.
You're right. There's Darryl Kile's curveball, and it's a good one. A lot of break on it, and he changes speeds with it.
Abbott away from second, 1 out. There's that curveball again. And now he's got Abbott hung up. He took off on that one. Wow. He's making it interesting. Already into second base is Eisenreich, and finally Abbott is tagged out.
Well, he made the best of a bad situation there. He stayed in the hot box long enough for Eisenreich to get down to second base. So he just traded places with him, which doesn't hurt in this situation. Well, if you're at second base, the ball looks like it's going to the right side. It was to the right side of the mound, so you automatically take off. But he does a good job of stretching it out. Actually, the Astros did not do a good job of closing the gap very quickly, and that allowed Eisenreich to get down. Now you see Kyle being smart enough just to walk him on down so that if he does go back to the bag, they can tag both of them, and Eisenreich would have been out. So good job there by Abbott after he got caught.
The put out from 1 to 5 to 6 to 1. Pitcher to third baseman to shortstop to the pitcher. And here is Gary Sheffield. And a base hit could well put the Marlins ahead. Eisenreich at second. A sharp breaking ball outside. And how many sharp breaking balls has Sheffield seen this year a foot outside and in the dirt? Now, he has walked 30 times this year in the season's first 28 games, and he's been hit 4 times. On the other hand, he is not hit well even when they have pitched to him. A .225 average, 4 homers and 11 batted in.
Well, the difficult part for him is not knowing when they're going to come after him and when they're just going to throw pitches and try to get him to chase. And he says the frustration has set in a little bit. He's gone out of the zone a few times trying to, get himself started. And a lot of times people believe that your cleanup hitter, your best hitter, may have to swing at a few pitches off the plate just to try to drive in some runs.
Well, first base is open. A right-handed hitter on deck, though, and a hot one. Moises Alou. Nice pitch. 1 ball and 1 strike.
A little off-speed pitch. Looked like he took something off of the fastball. That's a changeup over the outside part of the plate, and you can see the movement on that pitch. Sheffield just attacks it, which he always does, and I think that's the thing that makes him a great hitter, is he is very aggressive, and he really attacks the baseball.
42 home runs last year and 120 RBIs, even though he walked 142 times. And that high curve misses. So the count is 2-1. Now Sheffield, when he has had the men in scoring position and they have pitched to him, has not done well. 3 for 16, which says to me, Joe, maybe incorrectly, but it says to me that maybe he has been swinging in a few too many bad pitches in spots like this. 2-1 the count. One thing is for sure, if they do walk him, then they got to go against one of the most effective RBI men in the league so far this year, Moises Alou. There he is on deck. 31 RBIs already this year, even though his ball club has been struggling. In the air, left center field. This one is still going. And caught by Derek Bell, right in front of the wall near the 375 marker. Very deep left center field. Biggio, Listash, and Bagwell coming up. The Marlins nothing, and the Astros coming up now. Last of the first inning, and there's Larry Dierker, the freshman manager of this ball club with which he pitched for so many years, and then for even more years broadcast here, in more than 30 years watching the Astros day in and day out. Here's the Pepsi batting order for Dierker's Astros. Biggio at second base, Listash at short, Jeff Bagwell at first base, Luis Gonzalez still slumping in left, and whoever's hit fourth is slumped. Derek Bell is hit there most of the time. He's hitting fifth in center. Thomas Howard in right, Eusebio the catcher, Billy Spires at third base, and Darryl Kile hits ninth. He's the Astros pitcher. And on the mound for the Florida Marlins, the man that his manager, Jim Leland, said would be his first choice to start in a must-win game, Kevin Brown. And for the second year in a row, he is pitching extremely well.
Well, he led the league, as we mentioned, last year in earned run average. I think the thing that has really made him a great pitcher the last couple of years has been the cut fastball. He's always had the good sinker, and he used the changeup occasionally, but the cut fastball keeps the right-handers from going out over the plate, and it also keeps the left-handers from going out. I mean, he can go in and out now, whereas before he was basically sinking the ball away from left-handers and into right-handers.
Craig Biggio, he's hitting .310. It's 7 at-bats here last night in a 13-inning game. And a good fastball in there for a strike. And you see on the radar gun, 91 miles an hour. So Brown isn't like your typical sinker baller. I mean, he throws hard. And the ball has great movement on it.
And it throws a real heavy ball. And by that, I mean it's real heavy sinker. It's like he slipped on the mound there. That ball was up and in. Biggio has only had 5 at-bats against, well, 3 at-bats, I'm sorry, against Kevin Brown. He's 1 for 3, so it's still too early to get a pattern of how Kevin's going to pitch to him or how he's going to hit against Kevin. I think you need about 20 at-bats before you can find a pattern.
And it's 1 ball and 2 strikes. He'll mix in a slider occasionally.
And we talked about the ball sinking in. We saw one up and in. Now he goes away. That's a little slider down and away, or cut fastball. And that's the pitch, as I said, I think has made him more effective the last 2 years than he was before.
Slider again. And Conine to Brown covering. And there is 1 away.
Let's take a look at the defense. We just saw Conine make that play at first base. Kurt Abbott is at second base tonight, and as John mentioned, they're trying to change the offense a little bit, but Castillo also has a sore heel, so they decided to give him a little more rest at this time. They thought he might be in there tonight, but Abbott had a pretty good ball game last night, so he gets another start at second base.
Abbott hit a dramatic home run last night in the 9th inning to help send that game into extra innings. In fact, that was one of 2 dramatic home runs they hit in the 9th. Greg Zahn also hit one. He's the catcher for Brown today. Here's Pat Listash, former American leaguer. And as such, he saw quite a bit of Kevin Brown when Brown was with the Texas Rangers for many years. And then he had 1 year with the Baltimore Orioles before coming over to the National League last season. And Listash has not yet started to hit for his new ball club.
But he has had some success against Kevin Brown in the past. But again, I think this is a different Kevin Brown than what he saw in the American League.
Listash, a switch hitter, hitting only 187. And that's foul down the left field line. I mentioned his success against Brown. 7 hits in 22 at-bats, lifetime against him. Brown, in his American League days, was never as dominating a pitcher as he has become here in the National League. And even when he won 20 ball games with Texas, he was much more typical as a sinker baller in that he gave up a lot of hits, even when he had success.
I think he's added velocity to his fastball, which makes it a heavier sinker.
This is a slow shot. Renteria, barehanded, attempted to pick up. It wouldn't have mattered. Listash just too fast.
The only chance that he had was to try to barehand it and throw in one motion, and he could not make the play. And as you mentioned, if he waits back, catches it properly, it's going to be a base hit anyway. Now watch how quickly Listash gets out of the box. See, he's way down the line. He's almost 3/4 of the way down the line when Renteria actually makes contact with the ball. So, as John said, it wasn't going to make much difference whether he caught it or not.
Now that Listash is aboard, Brown's going to have to keep a close eye on him because he's always been a pretty good base stealer. He's stolen 4 bases so far this year, even though he's not reached base very often. Here is Jeff Bagwell. He is the big man for the Astros. He is 3rd in the league in RBIs right now with 29, 8 home runs, a 3.19 average. And that's a called strike.
That'll be interesting to see how Bagwell approaches Brown, because Bagwell has had a lot of problems getting hit with pitches inside, and most pitchers in this league will try to pitch him inside, and Brown's ball really tails in once it starts in. So we'll have to see if he makes any adjustments by moving off the plate or opening up a little quick.
Back to Brown. Didn't know who to throw to at first. Abbott gets one, and not in time at first. The hesitation by Brown cost them the double play.
Well, it's better to hesitate than to throw that ball into center field. You have to make sure of one on every ground ball, and that's what he does. He's watching. Now, when he's ready to throw, he doesn't know who he's going to have at second base. See, right there, he's not ready. Now he finds Abbott, and Abbott tries to turn it over, but he can't do it quickly enough. But you have to make sure of one, so you don't want to throw the ball in the center field trying to rush for the double play.
Luis Gonzalez comes up now, 2 down, and Bagwell at first. Here's a question. I mean, why didn't he know?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well,
Gonzalez takes a strike.
one of the things that happens there, if you're the second baseman, the ball's hit to that side of the mound, you actually start toward the ball. Because if he doesn't catch it, you want to charge it, flip to the shortstop. And in doing so, he probably was a little late getting to the bag.
There goes Bagwell. Here's Zahn's throw. Not in time. A steal for Bagwell. That's his first of the year.
Kevin Brown is usually pretty good at holding runners, but he probably did not think much about Bagwell. And he doesn't. As you see, he takes that slower delivery right there, but he's usually pretty good. Zahn makes a good throw. Watch, it's right on target. But by the time he tags and watch, he catches it and then he reaches. And that little reach cost him.
Whoa, almost hit it. 2-1 the count to Gonzalez. No score in the game. Last of the first inning, 2 down. Bagwell at second base.
Sometimes, you know, a pitcher, you get too comfortable with Charles Johnson behind the plate, too. If he's back there, you know, you figure he's going to throw Bagwell out or they're not going to attempt it. So he may have just fallen asleep a little bit there, not forgetting that Charles wasn't back there.
Wow. Now that's the movement we're talking about. 2 balls, 2 strikes to Gonzalez.
The left-hander has a couple of choices with this pitch. This pitch starts on the inside, and look at it really run away and down. I mean, you have to go back through the middle or the other way with that pitch.
Gonzalez has not hit. He's at 193 and does not have a single home run as of yet. Only 4 batted in. This has been a season-long problem. The first 5 weeks of the year for the Astros. No production from the 5th place hitters right now. Bagwell doesn't drive somebody in. Well, they don't score much. Bagwell at second. And right in on the hands of that one. That was that cut fastball, I think.
Yes. See, John, I don't really advocate going the other way, as a lot of people do, say, you know, take that sinker and hit it the other way. I believe that you should always try to hit the ball back through the middle. Because if you're trying to go the other way with a sinker and he throws you a cut fastball as he did there, you have no chance of hitting it. If you're trying to hit everything back through the middle, you will stay on the ball. You won't pull off of that sinker away. I think if you just try, and you will still have your bat speed, and you can still handle a pitch inside if he makes a mistake. And when you're just strictly going the other way, really it's very difficult to handle anything inside.
Derek Bell on deck. He would be next. Jeff Bagwell at second, ready to go on anything. It's into left field, a base hit. Here comes the throw by Eisenreich. Offline, it's 1-0 to second. Safe! Gonzalez.
Good hitting there by Gonzalez. I think if you see his bat angle, he wasn't strictly going the other way. He was going, looked like he had a good approach. The ball got in on him a little bit, and he fought it off that way, which is good. Now watch this. I don't see him go. Watch, he pulls. He's not going the other way completely. Good hitting, though. Just past Renteria, he did what he's supposed to do, try to knock it down. He wasn't able to do so, but poor throw here when the ball comes all the way in the air like that. You cannot do that. You allow the other runner to get in the scoring position by going down to second base.
And Jeff Bagwell, by virtue of his first stolen base of the year, able to score that run. And, of course, let's not forget the double play that should have been in the hesitation by Brown, and that kept the inning going. Derek Bell, he has been struggling since the beginning. His average only .218. This guy drove in over 100 runs last year, and they need him to do around that again because they don't have really a typical cleanup type hitter, Joe. Not a big 35-40 home run man to hit there.
Now, there's still a question in my mind about moving Bell to center field. That changes his focus. That's a new position for him to learn, although he's played center field some in the past. But it's still a more difficult position to play than what he's used to playing. And that has to work on his mind a little bit. I think it's difficult to take one of your best hitters and move him around.
2 strikes to count to Bell.
That would be like taking Bagwell from first base and moving him, you know, over to third base again. I think that puts added pressure on you, and it makes you have to, I mean, it does mess with your mind. I don't care what anyone tells you. And Bell tells me he's okay, but any change does bother you.
1-2 now to Bell.
Because when you're playing center field, you really have to concentrate on defense because center field is a defensive position. And I really believe that it does take a little bit away from your offense.
There's a slider for strike 3 call. Caught the inside with Bell jumping back away. But the Astros have gone ahead 1-0. Moises Alou and then Bobby Bonilla and Jeff Conine when we get back. And a called strike to Moises Alou. Here we go to the second inning. 1-0 for Houston over Florida. Alou, at the start of the day, led the National League in RBIs, but he has fallen behind Larry Walker. The new league leader. Walker drove in 4 runs today in Denver as part of the Rockies' 9-0 win over Philadelphia, and now leads the league with 33. But the day's not over yet. Moises was about as hot as a guy could get there for a while. Ooh.
Why are we jumping up here?
I don't know. We jumped and we acted like we got personally bruised in that. I don't know what hurt all the way up here. You know, Lou is moving very slowly up the first base line.
Well, the ball, watch now, he starts into the ball. He freezes for a second there and just goes straight back. He doesn't have a chance to get out of the way. And I'm sure that's smart, so that's why he takes his time getting to first base.
They just now got there. I mean, he walked slowly, deliberately to first base. Now Bobby Bonilla, 289 average, no homers, 8 RBIs. And that long RBI drought
that you mentioned several times last week.
Just the facts. Just reporting the facts. But he broke out. I mentioned it, and then he broke out.
You're right.
Broke out. And he's been breaking out ever since.
Yeah, actually had a good day the next day. Drove in the winning run.
He had a 2-run triple against Trevor Hoffman of San Diego to win a ball game 2-1 after we departed. Still not hitting the long ball. No home runs in the pitch out. But Moises was not running. Alou has stolen 2 bases. 1-0. Houston leading Florida. We're in the second inning.
That was just a check because they thought Moises Alou was upset for getting hit. So the only way to get back sometimes is to steal a base. And they thought he might be trying to steal there. There's Larry Durker. I'm sure he's experienced that before.
And Bonilla lifts it foul. And back out of play.
Actually, John, I want to correct something. You know, I always call Larry Leroy because we were all, you know, teammates. And I remember now he reminded me today the reason we all called him Leroy. The first year in spring training, a writer wrote an article about him, and it said Leroy instead of Larry, so we always called him Leroy, but his real name is Lawrence.
You mean the writer got it wrong, and so you all just picked it up?
Yeah, you know, teammates do that.
Leroy.
Leroy. We called Jimmy Wynn the toy cannon, and we all had little pet names for each other. Rusty Staub, we called him Daniel.
Daniel. Yeah, that's an obvious one.
Yeah.
2-2 to Bonilla. And that's a bait. No, look at that. Thrown at second base. Wow. Listash. Like a magic act out there. A little forced out at second base. Bonilla safe at first. But he was robbed by that man, Pat Listash.
That's an excellent play. This saves us first and second situations. The little breaking ball outside, but Bonilla goes that way with it. Now watch Listash. This is one of the things that's great about AstroTurf. You can always count on the hop being there. You can always gauge the hop before it gets to you. On dirt, sometimes that ball will skid under your glove or hop over it, but AstroTurf, you usually have a true bounce.
Now Jeff Conine, and look at him flinch on that big curveball from Darryl Kile. It is 0-1. Conine is hitting .271, 5 home runs, and 15 driven in. 1-0 Houston ahead in the top of the second inning. Bonilla has 2 steals. He's at first. Nice save by Eusebio. And the umpire will inspect that ball. 1 ball and 1 strike.
Looked like that was a changeup that Kyle held on to too long. Good job there by Eusebio to keep the ball in front of him. Yeah, that's what it is. He holds on to it a little too long, and he even caught it. Normally, you just try to block that, but he caught it.
Well, I think he was just trying to block it. That he lucked out catching it. There's a curveball.
You trying to say he closed his eyes or something?
No. I think he did it with his eyes fully opened, but that he just intended to block.
Okay.
I may be wrong. But I feel strongly about it. In right field, Thomas Howard. And that's out number 2. Now, he intended to catch it all the way. There's no question.
No doubt about that one.
Now, Greg Zorn comes up. Greg Zorn. He is the nephew of a longtime former major leaguer, Rick Dempsey. And so Greg Zahn grew up around professional athletics. And would have made his uncle proud here last night. He came up as a pinch hitter in the 9th inning and launched a home run against a pretty tough pitcher, John Hudak, to fuel the Marlins comeback. He also hit a home run in St. Louis on Thursday. So in 21 at-bats for the year, now has 2 home runs and 6 RBIs. Charles Johnson getting the rest here tonight. 1 ball, 1 strike now to Zahn. Zahn also last night, they had a little shortage of players in that 13-inning ball game. He ended up for the first time in his professional career playing first base. Charles Johnson doing the catching. In the dirt and over to second base will go Bobby Bonilla on the wild pitch. Zahn, like his uncle Rick Dempsey, came up with the Baltimore Orioles. And last year, he was really struggling, not hitting, not playing much. And they finally sent him to the minor leagues, and then they traded him to the Florida Marlins. And he's sort of been resurrected. There's no question about being a backup catcher with Florida as long as Charles Johnson is there. And misses 3 balls and 1 strike now to Greg Zahn. It was almost, in a way, he was kind of haunted in Baltimore, you know. Rick Dempsey had been an extraordinarily popular player in Baltimore history, and had always had a great throwing arm as a catcher. And Greg Zahn just never had that kind of an arm. Bonilla at second, and the count goes to ball 4. So Zahn gets the walk with first base open, and the pitcher coming up, Darryl Kile, will have to face Kevin Brown now. By the way, I said wild pitch on that ball that sent Bonilla to second. They scored it as a passed ball, so I stand corrected.
Well, that's interesting because the ball bounces. It should be a wild pitch.
Well, in the scoring rules, it says if it bounces in front of the catcher, you must score it a wild pitch.
Well, that's one thing that we've noticed, though, John, traveling around, that scorers do decide whether they don't use the rule book sometimes. They just decide whether they think it was a wild pitch or a pass ball or a base hit or an error. They just decide.
Well, it wasn't as bad a call as what we saw last week in the 9th inning in Florida.
Right.
And a foul back out of play by Brown. 1 ball, 1 strike.
Pretty good swing there by Brown. He's hitting .231, so he has had some success as a hitter this year, but that was a good swing. Had a good cut there.
Well, they don't score much for him, Joe. He's had to become a good hitter as part of his self-preservation. The man is obviously a survivor. 2 on, 2 out in the second. 1-0. Houston is leading. There's a fastball. 1 ball and 2 strikes. Well, we were talking about that scoring call. Did this bounce in front of the catcher?
Ball hit in front of the plate. I mean, but you know, you know what they do? They call themselves protecting the pitcher. So if the guy gets a base hit, then the run is not earned.
So they scored it a pass ball.
Which first
It seems to me that they should not be allowed to do that when the rule clearly reads. I mean, it doesn't offer any room for interpretation, does it?
Well, it shouldn't, but
the ball bounces in front of the catcher. But maybe they saw him catch that earlier ball on the bounce.
The one he should have blocked?
Yeah. Whoa! Curveball.
Well, everybody was moving but the umpire. The catcher thought it was a strike, but we'll see if it's high. Well, everybody's moving. You see the catcher started to move, the pitcher.
But they'll all be moving here now. Bonilla from second, Zahn from first. 2 down, and now Kile bluffs Bonilla back to the bag at second. The outfield pushed over toward the right field line against Kevin Brown. Kurt Abbott, the leadoff man, would be next. There go the runners. Pops it up foul right back toward us.
Another good swing.
So he's making Darryl Kile work here in the second. second base, and Son back to first base. Darryl Kile lives here in Texas now, year-round. Runners go. Broken bat right back to Kile. One hit batsman, one walk, one wild pitch scored as a pass ball. 2 men left. 1-0 Houston.
Gary Miller in the studio. MCI takes us to the Jacobs Field. Willie Blair pitching against Julio Franco, and a smash line drive off Blair's face. The radar gun timed it at 107 miles per hour. Franco couldn't even look. Blair suffered a fractured jaw. He'll be in the hospital overnight, but he wants everyone to know he's okay. They win for just the second time in 21 games at Jacobs Field. He has 3 of the Tigers' 12 wins. Back to John and Joe.
All right, Gary, thank you, and we're certainly glad to hear the what sounds like good news anyway. And Willie Blair, just the worst nightmare of any pitcher.
Yes.
And among the worst nightmares of any batter too, I would guess, Joe.
You're right. We all remember what happened to Herb Spoor when Billy Martin hit the line drive back and hit him in the eye.
The Astros coming up now in the last of the second inning. Thomas Howard will lead it off. Howard, a left-handed hitter, 341 average for the year, and he takes ball 1 from Kevin Brown. 1-0 for Houston. Now Howard had some success in the old days over in the American League against Brown. 6 for 17 against him last time, and he adds to that a base hit.
John, did you ever wonder why certain things happen on the field, like
where they stand in the batter's box?
Yeah. Take a look at the batter's box. You ever wonder why some people stand close to the plate, some stand off the plate, some stand deep? Look at all this area here in which a hitter can stand. And we're going to take a look at positions of some hitters in this league and also in the American League as we go around.
Eusebio. He takes a called strike.
And we'll discuss why you stand deep in the batter's box, why you stand up close, why you stand closer to the plate than other hitters. There are reasons for that, and it's not just about where a guy stands because he feels comfortable there. Part of it is about your bat speed and your plate coverage. If you have short arms, it wouldn't work for you to stand deep and away from the batter's box, so there are a lot of physical characteristics that are involved as well. But I think it's very interesting when you look around, you see all the different positions that hitters stand in.
You see Barry Bonds, for instance, get real close to the plate. Yeah. And then, a few years back, a guy like George Brett, or even today, Harold Baines, could hardly stand further away from the plate.
And they were diving in, which obviously gives them a little more room if you're standing way back.
Howard back to the bag at first. Eusebio at the plate.
I think there's one characteristic of the guys who hit 390, 380, the real high average hitters. Most of them stand so that when they swing the bat, their bat is in fair territory when they make contact.
Slow chop. Renteria, the second walk. But back to first. Double play. Eusebio hits into a pair.
Well, that's what Kevin Brown has been able to do most of this season and in the past. He got the double play ground ball in the first inning, but he wasn't able to complete it, so he didn't get a double play. This is a nice play by Renteria. Charges, then gives a nice feed to Abbott. Abbott takes his time and makes the double play. He didn't look real smooth there. Abbott didn't. He's a shortstop being converted to second base. He didn't have the footwork of, say, Castillo or some of your top second basemen in the league, but he got the job done.
Now Billy Spires, the former American leaguer, seen Brown many times in the past, and he is the only current member of the Astros ever to have hit a home run against Brown. 2 down and nobody on. See, Spires gets real deep in the batter's box and kind of crowds the plate in an open stance. That's a strike to the inside. That back foot is almost out of the batter's box.
Which is unusual if you're trying to hit a sinker ball pitcher. Usually you want to move forward in the box because you want to try to get the ball as early as possible. Get it before it sinks all the way away from your bat.
2-1.
first year in the big leagues, Nellie Fox talked to me about hitting, and he said knuckleball pitchers, sinker ball pitchers, and curveball pitchers, you always want to move forward in the batter's box.
Abbott backing up with a big hop, and he throws out, fires, and that's the inning. One hit, one left. We head to the third inning now. Top of the order, Abbott, Renteria, and Eisenreich. 1-0 Houston. The ESPN Sunday Night Baseball Game of the Week is brought to you by the Home Depot, where low prices are just the beginning. We've got baseball under glass tonight. Yeah, the roof here at the Astrodome is made out of a series of about 50 million little glass windows up there, Joe. And they didn't used to be painted. Ball one to Kurt Abbott, the leadoff man for the Marlins. He has the only hit so far against Darryl Kile. He's got the only 2 hits against him now. Don't forget, Stanley Cup playoffs are in full gear tomorrow night on ESPN at 7:30 Eastern, 4:30 Pacific. The Philadelphia Flyers and the Buffalo Sabres. Game 2, a huge ball game for Buffalo. They blew a big lead last night. Jean Leclerc, Derek Plant, the Flyers winning 5-3 in Buffalo last night. Huge game for Buffalo tomorrow, right here on ESPN. Hockey. Slap shot just goes wide. Here's Renteria, and he takes ball 1. We could do a hockey game. They ought to just stick us on a hockey game sometime.
Yes. I know how to cheer.
You could start ripping some of those hockey refs. There goes Abbott, and the ball is fouled back to the screen by Renteria. He had a sacrifice bunt his first time. Eisenreich is on deck, and then Sheffield, if they can get to him. Jim Leland relays some signs via third base coach Rich Donnelly. By the way, Jim Leland wanted us to mention that his brother Danny recently had neck surgery. He's recuperating and at home watching the ball game tonight, so he wanted to send along his best wishes to his brother Danny, and we wanted to also include ours with that. There goes Abbott. Biggio, the man at second. It's a double play. Listash with an acrobatic relay back to first to double up Renteria.
One of the reasons you start the runner from first base is to stay out of the double play. The other reason, of course, is to open up a hole for the hitter. Nothing works here. The ball is hit up the middle, and that's where the coverage is going to be anyway. Good quick flip by Biggio, and you see Listash avoids the slide of Abbott and is able to complete the double play at first base. Avoiding the slide was the toughest part of that play.
Now Jim Eisenreich, 2 down and nobody out. And the curveball from Kile misses. Houston Astros in the National League Central, and they've just been kind of the bridesmaid there for a couple of years. Last year it was the St. Louis Cardinals who won the division. The year before, the Cincinnati Reds, and in each one of those years Houston could not beat the team that eventually won the division. Bagwell got a tough hop over to Kile, and that is the inning, and Sheffield does not get a chance to bat here in the inning. Kile coming up, then Biggio and Listash. 1-0 Houston. ESPN Sunday Night Baseball from the Astrodome. I'm John Miller along with Joe Morgan, your Sunday night telecasters. Houston 1, the Marlins nothing. We go to the last of the third inning, and Darryl Kile, the Houston pitcher, will lead it off against Kevin Brown. Brown tying his shoelace out there as Kile gets ready to bat. From the Astrodome, each team has won 1 game in this series. The Astros blowing a 2-run 9th-inning lead last night with their vaunted bullpen, and that's something we perhaps should also bring up, by the way. Bobby Bonilla is not yet out at third base. So maybe Brown was just sort of pretending to tie his shoelace until Bobby Bonilla could get back out there. And whatever it was, Bonilla is there. And Brown's shoelaces are all firmly tied. We're ready to play. And the sinker misses to Kile for ball one. But this Astro ball club had been flawless in ball games that they had been leading in the late innings with its bullpen. And some feel it's the best in the National League, if not in the major leagues. Two outstanding closers, Billy Wagner and John Hudak, are really throw hard. Dennis Springer, another hard thrower. We saw him in Houston 3 weeks ago when we were there. Two and one the count from Brown to Kile.
John, I want to correct something I said. I said Billy Martin. I'm blaming him for hitting her score. It was Gil McDougall.
I didn't even realize you said Billy Martin.
Yeah. I had second baseman on my mind. They were talking about second baseman all night. We're going to focus on them.
Well, down he goes. So the strikeout for Kevin Brown, his second.
Second baseman, number 7.
Now Craig Biggio coming up. Biggio will try and give you an idea about his approach in the batter's box.
Biggio, one of the few hitters in baseball today that doesn't use a real thin handle bat. And there you see his position in the plate.
He's not right on top of the plate, but he gets up fairly close to it.
Well, I don't think a right-hander can get on top of the plate against Brown because he will sink that fastball back in on them and then start to cut fastball right at them and then let it slide over the plate. So you have to give him some room inside.
Let's get up toward the front of the batter's box a little bit.
Well, I think you need to get it toward the front. I don't think there's any doubt that a knuckleball pitcher or a curveball pitcher or a good sinker ball pitcher, you need to move up a little bit. And over the years, I've studied a lot of hitters. All the real great hitters will make adjustments to pitchers. They will move around in the batter's box. Most real subtle moves, you know, they'll make subtle moves like 3 or 4 inches one way or the other. You can't make gigantic moves because the catcher will see it, and they will pitch you differently. So, but most of the great hitters, I remember Rod Carew. I mean, he had so many different places he would stand according to the to the pitcher, and the situation. He would just move around a lot in the batter's box. I don't think very many hitters move as much as he does, but I think you'll find that some of your real good hitters will make adjustments in the batter's box.
1-2 the count. Still 1 ball and 2 strikes to Craig Biggio. He grounded out to first his first time.
That pitch right there is the reason you can't get too close to the plate if you're right-handed. It's just hard to fight that hard sinker off that's diving in on you.
The stash on deck. 1 out, nobody on here in the 3rd inning. Slider fouled off to the right.
That's why hitting is so difficult, John, because you run a fastball in and your mind says I have to protect against that pitch. The next pitch is a breaking ball away. And now you have to go get it. You have to protect on one and go get the other one. So it's kind of difficult to recognize the pitch real, quick and go get it. You have to recognize very quickly.
Ooh, that was nasty. 2 men down.
But see, that strikeout was set up by that fastball in. Let's take a look at this 2-strike pitch. That's that slider. He just fouled it off because he was really looking for something inside.
Wow, that bat just explodes and the ball is just barely foul. This dash, so the bat shatter into 100 different pieces there, and the ball ended up skipping on down the first base line and just fouled.
There's nothing hitters hate worse than people getting in their kitchen by jamming them. I mean, this is what most hitters protect against. See that ball rotating in and it just shatters his bat. I mean, every hitter tries to protect his kitchen because that is one place you do not want the pitcher to be able to get to. But when you do that, a lot of times you pull off the pitch, you're vulnerable to the pitch away, and that's what pitchers have to do. In, out, up, and down, and change speeds.
0-1 the count to Listash. 2 down, nobody on. Jeff Bagwell would be next. And as we can see in that replay, the bat shattered into maybe 7 or 8 pieces.
Okay, not 1,000.
Yeah.
I know what you meant, though.
And I didn't mean it literally.
Okay.
I'm just trying to create an image.
We didn't take it. I thought you were just, emphasizing that he shattered the bat.
He blew it into smithereens, Joe. Or 7 or 8 eens, anyway. 1 ball and 2 strikes.
Tried to get another bat.
Well, and that's one of the things Bagwell talked about before the game was that this guy, Kevin Brown, is going to break a lot of bats every time he pitches. Whoa, strike 3 call. He struck out the side. We head to the 4th inning. The power's coming up for Florida. Sheffield, Alou, and Bonilla. 1-0 Houston. And now, Sunday Night Baseball continues with the Florida Marlins power. Yeah, so I gave it
Potential power.
a dramatic intro here. Gary Sheffield against Darryl Kile. He lunges for one and pops it up on the first pitch. Bagwell, and just like that, Sheffield is retired. He drove one deep into left center his first time, caught by Bell, but this time he is very quick and easy out, and the batter will be Moises Alou.
Center fielder, number 18, Moises Alou.
It's interesting, Joe, to me that Sheffield, he seems to have let all of this, the walks and the pitching around him, sort of like get to him.
Well, it's difficult, John, as he said to me earlier. It's difficult to be patient at the plate when you're an aggressive hitter like he is. You want to attack the ball, and then you lose your aggressiveness if you do not attack the ball, and then sometimes you commit too quickly.
And the ball is out of play. 0-2 to count.
But there's no doubt that he is frustrated, by the way that he has been pitched at the early part of the season. But he had 142 walks last year and had a great season. And even if they walk you 10 or 12 times more this year, you're still going to have, 450 at-bats.
And that's out of play. Well, one thing is, if you hit on a lineup, say there's Ken Griffey in Seattle, where you've got Alex Rodriguez and Edgar Martinez and Jay Buhner and a lot of other real serious threats. I mean, if they pitch around you, they can still get really hurt. But with Florida so far, Bonilla was off to a real slow start, and there were not many reasons not to pitch around Sheffield. So that makes it a little bit of a difference, too, because the way Griffey's going with 14 home runs already, you keep saying, well, how come he didn't have 40 walks already?
Well, they're going to stop pitching to him if he keeps hitting all those home runs. They're going to make someone else beat them.
He dropped down with the side and missed with that sharp curveball. 2-2 to Moises Alou.
It's interesting, John, watch Moises Alou. He stands very deep in the batter's box, and the reason for that is it gives him a little longer look at the plate. He swings with his arms. He's not really a wrist hitter.
Caught at third by Spires.
Well, Moises stands deep, John, because he doesn't have a real quick bat like Gary Sheffield, so it gives him a little more time to get to the plate. So he stands way back here, but that gives him a little bit more time to get the bat out front. You have to be quick to stand in the front and close, but his bat, so he's not really what you call use his hands. He's not real quick with the bat.
Bobby Bonilla. That's a fair ball. Bagwell to Kile covering, and just like that, the Marlins' big guns are silenced. They were not able to get the ball out of the infield. Jeff Bagwell is coming up. 1-0 Houston. Sunday Night Baseball from the Houston Astrodome. 1-0. The Astros are leading as we move to the last half of the 4th inning. Last year's earned run average champion, And a member of the National League All-Star team, Kevin Brown, is on the mound. And now here's another perennial All-Star with the Astros, Jeff Bagwell, to lead it off here. Bagwell, in what is looming even as a larger play now, was able to avoid being doubled up. A little confusion about coverage at second base on what should have been an inning-ending double play in the first inning. He beat the relay to first and then subsequently stole second. And Gonzalez then singled him home for the only run of the game until now. Bagwell, 0 for 1 officially, but pretty productive 0 for 1.
Yeah,
it turned out.
Very good 0 for 1.
Jeff Bagwell. Now, he's a guy that gets a lot of walks.
Yeah.
A lot of teams pitch around him. The guys behind him are not swinging the bats well. But Bagwell sort of has a different approach mentally to that, Joe. Doesn't seem to let it get him down. Doesn't let it get into his head and affect his game.
Well, I think he goes through spells where it affects him and then, but he's able to block it out most of the time. You're right. But it doesn't matter who you are. If they walk you enough in key situations, you will get frustrated a little bit, and every once in a while go out of the strike zone. Now here's Bagwell. Look at his back foot. His actually real close to the plate. And so he has a little different approach. See, he's way back, but his back foot is actually close to the plate, meaning close to the edge of the inside corner. See how his foot is close to the edge inside corner there.
Strike 3 call on the inside. That's almost what you're talking about, Joe. That almost hit him, but
yeah,
he was very close.
Well, that's what is so difficult about handling Kevin Brown. He threw him a pitch away, and then he comes back inside. Remember, the pitch before this was away. Now look at this. It runs back in, and Bagwell is going out to get the cut fastball, but it's not a cut fastball. It's a sinker back inside, and it's strike 3, right on the inside corner. But that's what makes him so difficult to hit. The movement of the ball, moving in both directions.
Well, Brown has struck out each of the last 4 Astros. And here is Luis Gonzalez, who has driven in the only run of this game. 1-0. Houston is leading, last of the 4th inning. Gonzalez really battled it out with Brown in the first inning and finally hoped to single through the hole into left field to get Bagwell home.
And that was good hitting again because he was just attacking the ball. You see the difference this time. He took the ball over the middle of the plate and slapped it through the hole last time. Now what does Brown do? He cuts a fastball inside and he stays in on it. You know, now he will probably go away, but that's what happens. He sets you up to thinking that he's going to pitch you one way, but he has enough weapons that he can go another way. So you're really kind of at his mercy up there if he makes good pitches. And you're at both pitchers' mercy if they make good pitches. If they can move the ball around, have good enough control and good enough stuff, they're usually going to pitch good ball games.
2 strikes the count. And he fouls that one back out of play. Still 0-2.
And everything inside. And look, no fly balls, all ground balls, and 5 Ks.
I mean, even the 3 hits he's given up have been ground balls. One of them was an infield single. Look out.
Yeah, see everything inside. Look at that. I mean, and it doesn't matter who you are. As a hitter, your mind subconsciously, you start to think inside. You may even move off the plate, unconsciously move back, and then he will run the ball away. I mean, that's just the way he pitches.
Oh. Hard slider almost hit him in the foot. 2-2 the count. Well, so I think he must be setting him up for that sinker away here, Joe.
Well, I think he's got him into that position, yes.
2-2 the count.
He didn't get it down, but it was away. It was a sinker, but he did not get that pitch down where he wanted it.
He had that little real hard movement like
right
when he gets it down. 2-2 the count.
That was another thing Bagwell told me. He said he sinks the ball most of the time, but every once in a while he would ride that fastball a little bit in, especially on the right-handed hitter.
Well, I've seen him do it many times. I mean, he'd do it like a strikeout pitcher.
Right.
With a strikeout. That one is pulled foul.
But he's made up his mind that he's not going to let Gonzalez handle the pitch over the middle of the plate. He's going to try to stay in as he's done with 5 or 6 of these pitches, and he's going to try to hit the outside corner when he goes away.
Kevin Brown. It's interesting. He hit 16 batters last year, so we know he's not afraid to pitch in. And his mound opponent tonight also hit 16 last year, Darryl Kile, and they were part of a tie for first place in the league in hit batsmen last year. Mark Leiter was the third one. That one is hit well down the right field line. In there for a base hit. Sheffield heading for second. Gonzalez safe with a double.
This is a pitch that he did not get where he wanted. He got this one down a little bit, and most left-handers can handle that pitch down and in. Now watch. This pitch is supposed to be up, but it's down and in, and he gets enough of it. He doesn't hit this ball real hard. He just gets enough of it to get it down the right field line. And it was off the plate inside. It was actually a good pitch by Kevin Brown. He jammed him, but good swing there by Gonzalez was able to get it down the right field line.
Now Derek Bell, and Gonzalez has been in such a terrible slump. Larry Durker has to be overjoyed to see him 2 for 2 in this one. Now he needs to get Derek Bell going. Here's a swing and a miss, strike one.
Well, it's interesting in talking to Derek, he said he was going to go to his 2-strike swing early. And that looked like his 2-strike swing where he spreads out and just tries to, you know, make contact. He is not taking a big swing there. But I don't think you can be defensive against Kevin Brown because then he's already defeated you to a certain extent. I think you still have to try to be aggressive and attack the ball.
And that will get Gonzalez over to third base, which changes things considerably with only one out. Bell no longer needs a base hit now to get him home. And that will be scored as a wild pitch. By the way, that earlier scoring call was also changed to a wild pitch.
Well, we'll take a look at this, a breaking ball. There you see him, you can see his wrist cupped and come over it, the slider, and it just went down into the dirt. And Zahn did block it, but could not keep it in front of him.
Now the Marlins bring the infield in.
Well, on AstroTurf, you do not have to play all the way in because the ball will get to you rather quickly, or you can charge it knowing that you're going to get a good hop. So it still might be difficult for Gonzalez to score from third on a ground ball.
And, of course, ground balls, that's what Kevin Brown gets. Derek Bell struck out looking his first time. 1 ball and 2 strikes to count. See, Bell, 113 RBIs last year. 9th best in the league, even though he's not a big home run hitter. But he has not gotten it going so far this year. He is a key man in the Astros' fortunes. 2-2 the count.
And remember, they moved him to center field, you know, for Abreu, the young phenom they have who's not playing tonight. That's the reason they moved Bell to center field. They wanted to give him a shot in the outfield. But I still think they're going to have to reconsider that situation.
Foul ball, he stays alive. 2 balls, 2 strikes.
As you mentioned, without Bell, there's Abreu. Without Bell behind Bagwell and producing runs, you know, they're going to start to struggle later on. You have to produce runs, and Bell has proven that he can do that. You mentioned he only hit 8 home runs when he drove in 86 runs in 95. Last year he had 17 home runs and 113 runs batted in. So, and he missed a lot of the end of the season in 95.
2-2 the count. Gonzalez at third. Oh, he chased the bad ball. A slider got him swinging. 6 strikeouts for Brown, and that was a big one. Keeping the runner at third now with 2 down.
Well, we mentioned Brown having a lot of weapons, and that is another one. He threw him a fastball in before, get him looking inside, and then he goes away. Now, this pitch is out off the plate, but, you know, he's committed.
So the early season blues continue for Derek Bell. Runner at third with less than 2 down, and he was unable to even make contact. That's the 22nd time that he has struck out this year in only 103 at-bats. And usually he's a guy who needs to make contact to be effective. Here's Thomas Howard, the infield back in normal depth now. Each of the last 5 men that Brown has retired, by the way, has been on a strikeout. Nice save by Greg Zahn with a quick reaction there.
Well, Zahn went out to the mound and talked to Brown about how they were going to pitch to Howard. They wanted to make sure they're on the same page. And you can see he really hasn't thrown that sinker yet. That was a pitch that because he doesn't want to bounce a pitch in this situation and let the runner score. Yeah, you won't see him throw it too deep.
Here's Abbott, throws him out, and Kevin Brown gets out of the jam. Gonzalez double is wasted. We head to the 5th inning. Conine coming up, 1-0 Houston. I'm John Miller. This is Joe Morgan, and we're at the Astrodome. And Joe, Kevin Brown pitching a great game, but so too is Darryl Kile, and he's got the lead right now.
Well, you're right. Kevin Brown's record is good this year, but they still have not been scoring a lot of runs for him. So I think that's one thing we have to do. Hey, is that in your contract?
Yeah.
6 to sign?
Well, I got to take care of that. I know you get very upset if things aren't real neat and clean. Go ahead.
All right. No, but I mean, he's pitched very well tonight, but he's pitched well throughout the season. They just have not scored a lot of runs for him. Even though his record is pretty good, they still have not scored a lot of runs for Kevin Brown.
But you don't think he takes it personally?
No, I don't think so. I mean, he just says it makes him work that much harder.
Jeff Conine, the hitter. And a drive down the right field line. On the move is Howard. Can't get there. And it's over the wall for an automatic double.
The Astros may have gotten a break there. That ball would have bounced away. Conine could have possibly had a triple to lead off the 5th inning here.
It's only his 2nd double of the year.
Well, when this ball bounces away, you'll see that he's running full speed toward the fence. That ball hits the fence and bounces back. He may have been able to go for 3. Instead, it's a ground rule double.
In the corners, they had the fence just very low, only 8 feet high. And then, of course, very close to the corners, you have the out-of-town scoreboards where the wall is much higher. But that hit right in the corner where the fence is low. Son to try and get him to 3rd, I would think, Joe. Although
well, I think he has to try to pull the ball. You can't, you have to play the game properly.
Pitcher is due up next, Kevin Brown. Well, I don't know what he was thinking there.
No, well, he had 1 strike. I guess he didn't want to go 0-2, but...
Well, he ensured that he went 0-2, though, didn't he?
I think you have to go up there with the mindset that you were going to pull the ball. Now, with 2 strikes, I think you just have to try to put the ball in play and drive him in. But you don't change your philosophy just because the pitcher's on deck. We saw Kevin Brown take some pretty good swings earlier, and you don't know whether the manager's going to try a squeeze or what he might do. Your job is to get him over to 3rd base.
0-2 the count. Darryl Kile on the hill. Oh, wow, that almost defied physics here, didn't it?
Well, he felt like Kyle was trying to throw him hard stuff to keep him from pulling it, but that was a slow curveball. He's way out in front, so he's still trying to pull this. And look at that. I mean, he is completely fooled by the speed of that pitch. And watch, he's way out in front trying to catch up with it. He's still trying to pull it, and that's a breaking ball. That's tough right there.
Here's Kevin Brown now. Runner still at 2nd base. His Zahn was unable to move him up. A couple of little things have conspired against the Marlins in this ball game. Brown's inability to get the double play back in the 1st inning that would have ended the inning with Bagwell, the hitter. There's Conine at 2nd now. Zahn unable to get Conine over to 3rd base here. Curveball stays up and in. 1 ball, 1 strike. Kyle, only 3 hits allowed, 1 walk, 1 strikeout. That strikeout is on his very first strikeout in the game. Kyle's got the kind of stuff usually where he gets some strikeouts too. Fastball, and Brown hit it off his foot.
Well, Kyle is not overpowering, but he has a good curveball, and he changes his speed well. So that's how he will get a lot of strikeouts. When he is on, he will get people to chase some pitches out of the strike zone.
Darryl Kile starting to get his career back together. 1993 made the All-Star team. He was a 15-game winner. Looked like one of the bright stars on the horizon for Houston. Did fairly well in the strike season of 94, but in 95 when they came back, he was just so terrible, they actually sent him to the minor leagues for a while. He was 4 and 12 in 95. Brown pops it up. Foul. This will go out of play off to the right. 1 ball and 2 strikes, the count. Now you see 1995, 4 and 12, an ERA nearly at 5. Last year he bounced back considerably, 12 and 11 with a 4.19 ERA. And now, of course, they're hoping to see him come back all the way to where he was in 1993, or even better than that. Down on strikes, and there's that curveball again. So, right when he needed him the most, Kile gets his first 2 strikeouts of the game.
Well, you see the pitch that he will go to when he's in a jam, and that's what the hitters have to start thinking about. You know, what is his best pitch when he has to get a guy out? And it's obvious that he feels that his breaking ball is his best pitch for that situation.
Here's Kurt Abbott. Now, Abbott is 2 for 2 in this game. And a base hit here could tie the ball game. Conine still at second. The catcher, Eusebio, is out talking to Darryl Kile. By the way, we mentioned Kile and strikeouts. Last year, he struck out 219 hitters in 219 innings. And both he and his mound mate, Shane Reynolds, had over 200 strikeouts. The last time the Astros had 2 pitchers with 200 or more strikeouts in the same year, the 2 pitchers were named Mike Scott and Nolan Ryan. Curveball, and that is a strike. By the way, both Scott and Ryan have had their numbers retired. Ryan here for 9 seasons, as was Scott. Fastball at the knees. Strike 2 call.
Well, obviously, Abbott was guessing there because he's seen him throw the breaking balls to get the other hitters out. He started him off with a breaking ball, so he's looking for another breaking ball. And Kyle hits the outside corner.
All right, so what's it going to be now?
Well, I mean, he has a couple of options. He can waste a fastball or try to throw a breaking ball to get him to chase it. I don't think he'll throw a strike with the breaking ball at this point.
There's a sidearm slider. Gave him a whole different look. Very impressive by Kyle. He strikes out the side after the double. 1-0 Houston. Former pitcher Larry Durker, he knows a thing or two about pitching, and right now there's been a lot of great pitching in the National League. He commented on it.
I think the pitching's getting a little better. You know, we faced a guy named Morris with the Cardinals. A young pitcher. He's got real good stuff. He has pretty good command of the strike zone. We faced Sean Estes with the Giants. He completely shut us down. Good-looking young left-hander. I think we're starting to see some good young pitchers come into the game. I think these things are cyclical. And I wouldn't be surprised, at least in this league, if the pitching doesn't make a little bit of a comeback.
Larry Durker, Tony Eusebio is the hitter, and the count is 0-2 as he faces Kevin Brown.
I know you agree with him that these things go in cycles, but I'm not so sure that cycle can turn over in 1 year like that, personally.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure that he's saying that there's a dramatic improvement just from last year to this year.
Okay. He just means that it's going to get better.
But as over the period of time, the disparity between the American League and the National League has never been larger in the history of the designated hitter as it is right now. And how the National League will turn out this year, we don't know. We only know the way it started the first 4 or 5 weeks. But you can see right now the runs per game between the 2 leagues, 1.8 runs per National League game less than the American League, which is by far the biggest difference between the 2 leagues in the 25 years of the DH. And that's a base hit for Eusebio, who hit a double play his first time. He's 1 for 2. Hit number 5 for Houston.
It was interesting that Dave Duncan of the Cardinals said he knows how to pitch in the National League, and he said you have to keep the ball down. Well, I thought you'd pitch that way in both leagues, but he's saying, especially in the National League, you have to keep the ball down.
You see right now you've got 7 teams in the National League at the start of the day averaging less than 4 runs per game. including the divisional titleist to the Cardinals from a year ago, the Giants, who are 18-10 this year, the Dodgers, who have a winning record and who, of course, went to the postseason last year as well. Marlins have not done that well. Spires at the ground ball to second. Abbott to second. It's pulled out of the dirt by Renteria, and he saved the out.
Well, he made the right play to cut off the lead runner, but I thought he could have whirled and made the play a little quicker. But you remember, he's learning to play second base. Now watch. He makes a tough throw. That's a tough throw when you're leaning toward first base and throwing back. In fact, he bounces the ball. Nice play there by Renteria to come up with it.
So here's Darryl Kile, the Astros pitcher, to try and help himself here. Kile is 1 for 17 as a hitter. And, of course, that doesn't include facing a guy like Kevin Brown that often. He hasn't been able to hit much against guys who are just mere mortals. He tries to get the butt down, and it's foul off to the right. One thing in this issue of the hitting, too, Joe, for instance, the St. Louis Cardinals, we've seen them twice, and half their lineup was out for a good part of the season. You know, they were in a terrible slump, but they just got their team back. Kevin Brown, a guy who, since coming to the National League, has had to work without much run support. He's been the worst supported starting pitcher in the league since his arrival. And that's a foul, and Kyle is very upset with himself there, castigating himself for not getting that butt down.
I think it got a piece of Zahn, too. That ball foul tipped off the bat of Kyle, and they'll hit Zahn as well.
0-2 the count.
Take a look. Everything's perfect right there. He's in pretty good posture, except then he reaches for it. And it did get a little piece of Zahn.
0-2 the count. San Diego Padres, another ball club that offensively, they haven't had Steve Finley yet. Caminetti's been in a slump. And it's strike 3. 7 strikeouts for Brown, including 6 in the last 2 2/3 innings. Leob and Biggio coming up now. Cincinnati was off to a real slow start, slumping badly. Cubs were in a slump. Of course, the Cubs started the year by having to face just Florida and Atlanta. I mean, they were facing an all-star caliber pitcher every day their first 10 games. And without Mark Grace for much of that. Here's Biggio. He is down to the first and struck out. And there's an out-and-out sinker. 0-1.
John Zahn got up and motioned to his infielders that, you know, be alive for Bill Spires trying to do a delayed steal. So make sure you're watching and someone is covering if he does delay and go to second base. So that's how he keeps you honest. That ball starts just off the inside edge and really moves in on you. And it just kind of keeps you from reaching out over the plate to get a cut fastball or to get a sinker out over the plate.
There he goes. And he makes it. Brown threw the ball to first base. And then Conine had no play and threw the ball nearly into left field where Renteria saved it.
Well, that's what Zahn had warned him about, him doing something at first base. And I think this is supposed to be a delay at first, and then he sees he has to keep going, and he makes it. Well, that's what you call getting a good jump.
Yeah. Now, Brown, had he stepped off the rubber, could have gotten him into a rundown, right?
Right. That was the play, to step off the rubber. But he caught him by surprise.
Now, a base hit by Biggio could mean a run. But, of course, that's always the rub against Kevin Brown. Making solid contact is not so easy.
I mean, Biggio has really made himself into an outstanding player, John. Remember, years ago he was a catcher, and he wasn't throwing very well, and he wasn't doing real well as a catcher. They moved him to second base, and since that time, I mean, he's become one of the top players in the league. So He has really worked hard. He won a Gold Glove. He's really worked hard to become a good player.
Oh, there's that slider and another strikeout. That is a total of 7 strikeouts by Brown in the last 3 innings. Renteria, Eisenreich, and then Gary Sheffield coming up. 1-0 Astros. The ESPN Sunday Night Baseball Game of the Week is brought to you by the more than 1,525 AutoZone stores across America. AutoZone, the best parts in auto parts. The Marlins coming up with Edgar Renteria, and he lifts one foul and out of play off to the right. 1-0 for Houston. We're seeing quite a pitcher's duel going here. And the last couple of innings, it's really started to feel like a pitcher's duel with both Kile and Brown starting to totally dominate this game. Here's one of the ways that Kile has done it. After the leadoff double by Conine in the 5th inning, he struck out the side. And, of course, we've seen Brown the last 3 innings all of a sudden, especially when he's gotten into a little trouble, become almost unhittable. Renteria had a sacrifice bunt, and he has grounded into a double play.
I think Kyle has gone a little bit more to his breaking ball and changing speeds a little bit more, and especially when he's gotten in trouble. And I think that's been the reason he was successful there with the runners in scoring position. There it is again.
Yeah. Strike 3 call.
Well, that's 4 strikeouts in a row, and this is a big breaking curveball. See, it starts at Renteria. You see him buckle. His knees buckle. It breaks right over the inside corner. And you see him break down right there, and it's too late.
It looked like something that the special effects people put together the way that ball broke. Eisenreich, 0-1. He is hit into a fielder's choice, and he is grounded out to first. 1-0, the Astros. There's that curve and a message. 1 ball, 1 strike.
And John, back to that pitching discussion, I think it may be a little which comes first, the chicken or the egg. I think sometimes pitchers are not making, as you said, the mistakes that they made last year by throwing pitches, a lot more pitches in the middle of the plate. But I think a lot of hitters are chasing more pitches than they ever did before. So it's a combination of, maybe if you want to use the term better pitching and poorer hitting, or we'll just have to wait and see. I really believe that we're going to have to wait and see on the pitching simply because I think there have been a lot of cold weather games, even though I know that it's been cold in the past. I still think that you're going to see the hitters catch up, with the pitchers before it's over.
Well, I hope so.
Well, because you have the Albert Bells of the world, you know that he's...
At second base, Biggio. He throws out Eisenreich. 2 down, and Sheffield is coming up.
I think you have a lot of hitters, John, who are proven hitters who are not hitting well right now, and obviously Albert Bell is an example. Barry Bonds, Sheffield. I think a lot of these guys are proven hitters, and they're not hitting well right now.
Although I think Durker's comment was specifically about the National League. The American League, there's been plenty of offense. Cleveland Indians, for instance, had hit 54 home runs without Albert Bell going into action today in 28 games. Of course, today they got shut out by the Detroit Tigers. And there's ball 1 to Gary Sheffield. Well, Sheffield hadn't gotten going yet. Barry Bonds has not gotten going yet. No less than a 30 than Greg Maddux said the 2 of them are probably the best hitters in the game. And the count goes to 2-0 to Sheffield. Ray Langford just got back. Gant has not been hitting yet for St. Louis. All around the league you could point to guys. Caminetti hadn't gotten going yet. Finley's not even playing for San Diego. And that's a ball.
I just know that there are a lot of proven hitters who are not hitting, and they will hit before the year's over.
Barry Larkin has not gotten going yet with the Cincinnati Reds, although Deion Sanders certainly has. Way outside. Well, a 4-pitch walk to Sheffield. With 2 down and nobody on in a 1-run game. Moises Alou is coming up now. Moises has been hit by a pitch, and he is lined out to third.
I think that's kind of typical of what happens to Sheffield. You know, if they get behind in the count, they just go ahead and, you know, try to get him to chase a pitch, or he ends up getting a walk.
Sheffield at first base. That is the 31st time this year that he has walked. Keep in mind, he also has stolen 3 bases. The Marlins like to do a lot of running. Moises Alou, he's their big RBI man. Up the middle, right there, Listash. DiBiggio covering, and just like that, the Marlins are retired. Listash, then Bagwell. 1-0 Astros.
Home Depot brings us this week's rising star. It is the Expos Rookie of the Year candidate, Vladimir Guerrero, who missed about a month. He's back with a vengeance. He's played 11 Major League games. It's his second home run. Came off Sterling Hitchcock's. The Padres continue in a tailspin. Jim Bullinger also homered in this game. The Pods have lost 12 of 15.
All right, Gary, hard times in San Diego indeed for the defending Western Division champions here on the Sunday night baseball game of the week from the Astrodome. 1-0 the Astros. We go to the last of the 6th inning. Pat Listash will lead it off against Kevin Brown. Jeff Bagwell is on deck. And there is ball 1. Vladimir Guerrero, a lot of people made him their preseason pick to win the Rookie of the Year in the National League, but he injured himself in the spring. He's just really getting started now.
Got plenty of time.
So he didn't waste much time in getting that first home run. And Moises Alou himself says that Vladimir Guerrero not only is a guy who could be Rookie of the Year, but probably the best player in the game someday. Vladimir has a brother, Wilton, who is another guy who could go out and win a Rookie of the Year with the Dodgers this year. But Vladimir is the guy who can do it impressively with the long ball, as well as being able to run and a strong arm and everything else. 3-1 the count to Listash. This is a guy that he just can't walk. That was Bagwell coming up.
Not only that, you know, things can happen with Listash on the bases. And in the 1-run ball game, one more run could make a big difference. Foul ball. 3-2 the count. By the way, how tough has Brown been? Well, this is the first time in this game that he has gone to a 3-ball count on any hitter. And in the last 3 innings, 7 of the 9 outs that he has recorded have been via the strikeout, which is a little unusual. I mean, he can get the strikeout, but he doesn't usually get these huge strikeout totals. 8 total for him in this one. Now that's what he gets. Ground balls. 1 away. Now Jeff Bagwell. And you mentioned, Joe, the last time we saw Bagwell, in terms of being affected or not being affected, when the pitchers constantly pitch around you. And one thing for sure, Bagwell last year, although he says he tries to block it out and not let it really get into his head. But remember, he had a real slow September last year. Or, you know, a bad finish. Right, he and Bell both.
And the Astros, who could just not beat anybody last September, they fell out of the race. And many people felt that Bagwell was pressing that final month as his team fell into a slump. He nonetheless ended up with 120 RBIs.
But he's the man, so, you know, he quite naturally wants to take it on himself to try to get the job done. And sometimes when you do that, that's exactly what happens. You start to press a little bit. You try to do a little more than you're capable of, or doing a little too much at that moment. See, this is why Kevin Brown is so tough. You know, remember, he struck him out with a fastball inside last time, so he starts him off with a curveball away. Now these first couple of pitches all have been away. He has not come back inside. Now he's got 1 and 2, and Bagwell is still leery that he pitched me inside last time. So now what will he do? Yeah, everything's away. That's why hitting is so difficult, especially against a good pitcher. because he's able to change his pattern of pitching to you 3 or 4 times a ball game. He may pitch you one way in the first inning, the third inning he pitches you differently, and then you get to the 5th and he even changes one more time, or he goes back to something that's been successful.
Bagwell with that protection on his left hand. Tried to get in on there, and he pops it up, does Bagwell. Abbott. And that is out number 2. Well, we did talk to Bagwell about this notion of being pitched around and not letting it affect him mentally. Here's what he told us.
If guys think about it, if there's somebody hitting, if Frank Thomas is hitting behind somebody and you're up, I mean, you're not always just going to get fastballs anyway. You know, you're going to get your breaking balls and your changeups and things like that. And if that happens with a man in scoring position, basically you just got to pick out a situation and a pitch that you want to hit. It might be a curveball or slider in that situation. Get it and hit it. Nobody's saying you have to hit it out of the ballpark. That's because that's not how you drive in runs all the time. You know, you got to take your hits to right center and into right field and the left field and things like that.
I think that's maybe a logical approach, and maybe it even sounds obvious in a way, but I know Gary Sheffield right now has had a hard time getting into that kind of frame of reference as they continue to pitch around him. Bonilla catches the foul off the bat of Gonzalez. Bonilla will be coming up when we get back. Hi, wave if you love John and Joe. Oh, yeah, there you go. I knew it. 1-0 Houston. We go to the 7th inning. Sunday night baseball from the Astrodome. Darryl Kile to Bobby Bonilla. Man, once he's got locked in with that curveball, he just can't seem to miss with it here the last 3 innings or so. Bonilla has hit into a force out, and he has grounded out to first. Switch hitter. 1 ball and 1 strike.
And truthfully, John, that's a pitch that you do not see very often. Now more pitchers go with the fastball, the slider, and the change. You do not see a lot of off-speed curveballs.
Fastball. This dash, nice pickup. Throws him out. And there is 1 away in the 7th inning. Beginning tomorrow at 5 Eastern from the Indian spot on the field and the coveted pole position. That's Saturday, 1 Eastern on ABC. And here is Jeff Conine, and he takes ball 1. Wasn't all that interested in the Indy 500 this year, Joe, until I heard you were driving.
Yeah.
Because I've driven with you a couple of times, and I think you're going to win the thing. I'll be shocked if you don't win that pole position. 1 ball, 1 strike to Conine. He is flying to right, and he is doubled. Whoa, man. And we've had both pitches where our only response has been, whoa.
Yeah, I think sometimes they're catching the hitters guessing, and obviously they're guessing wrong. And maybe they're not guessing curveball, but they're guessing speed, and they're throwing just the opposite.
Drops down with the side, but this time with a fastball. That one is fouled back over our heads.
John, you made a point I think it's important to maybe discuss, and that is that, you know, last year when all the home runs were being hit, that, you know, a lot of guys said the pitching was bad, and so forth and so on. Now that the pitching, you know, is the pitching actually better now because they're hitting fewer home runs? You have to give the pitchers credit, and maybe you're right, as Larry Durker was doing. Maybe you're right there. I mean,
curveball hit sharply, but right to Listash. 2 down.
And what you're basically saying, we can't have it both ways, which is probably correct. I mean, if the pitching was so bad last year when they were hitting all the home runs and they're not hitting them anymore, maybe the pitching is better.
Well, Sean Estes, the young left-hander with the Giants that Durker mentioned in that comment, came in here and pitched a 2-hit shutout against the Astros last Saturday night. And Estes is a young guy that has the ability to end up being a big star in this game. But he'd only been in 12 big league games until this year. So, you know, we're still finding out about him. And he's got a chance to be outstanding. And how about this guy, Esteban Loaiza? I mean, he used to pitch for Jim Leland in Pittsburgh the last 2 years. And, in fact, had so many problems that they sent him back to the minor leagues for a while last year. Well, he shut out the Atlanta Braves last night, and his ERA is a 1.49 or something. He's just pitching great for Gene Lamont over there in Pittsburgh. 3-0 the count to Greg Zahn. But we'll see. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I think that's the great thing about baseball because, I mean, you have to wait and see when Estes and some of these young pitchers go around the league where guys have seen them once or twice to see if they make any adjustment. If they can't, well, then obviously that pitcher is going to be successful.
Ball 4 to Zahn, and now Kevin Brown is due up, and he will bat.
I agree with this. Personally, John, I think, and there you see the ERA leaders in the National League. And there's Loaiza, the guy you were talking about. Reed with New York, really kind of the only pitcher that's new to the scene. The other ones are...
Yeah. Well, Loaiza's new to that list, that's for sure.
Right.
And Reed, a former replacement player with the Cincinnati Reds, a pariah among established major leaguers, including with the Mets this year. But he's pitched so extraordinarily well. And he's been a real savior for that staff, where they've had so many injury problems and ailments of every kind. Wow, nice pickup at third base by Spires, and he throws out Brown. One man left. Darryl Kile has shut him out through 7. Derek Bell will be coming up. Houston 1, Florida 0. Astros 1, Marlins 0, last of the 7th, and a couple of plays around second have been pivotal in this game, Joe.
Yeah, we were spotlighting a second baseman in this ball game, and here's a double play that wasn't turned. Abbott broke in first, got to second, had to be stationed there, and then made the play. Did not turn the double play. They scored a run. Now here's Biggio. Watch how he goes to the shortstop, gives it to him on the outside. That's the only way they could have completed that double play. So good job there by Biggio. It shows that he's been playing second base a lot longer than Abbott has.
Now into the last of the 7th inning. Kevin Brown to Derek Bell, who has struck out twice in this game, and it is 0-1. Well, the first double play that was not turned kept the first inning going for the Astros. Jeff Bagwell reached on the play. Instead of being doubled up, he stole second, and Gonzalez then singled him home, a run that should not have scored. And that still is the only run of the game. Strike 3 called.
Well, you can see how tough Kevin Brown is on right-handed hitters. I mean, they just do not know which angle he's going to release the ball from, where it's going to go, what movement it's going to have, whether it's going to move back in, move away. It's just so difficult. See, look at that. That's kind of a sidearm fastball, and it's strike 3 right at the knees.
One down, and here is Thomas Howard. He is singled and grounded to second. Into left center, Eisenreich. That is the very rare fly ball allowed by Kevin Brown. It's the first put out by an outfielder of the Marlins in this game. 2 down, and now Tony Eusebio.
John, I want to go back to the last inning when Jim Leland let Kevin Brown hit. See, I agree with that. It was 2 outs, runner at first base. You still have 6 more outs to use, and you've got your best pitcher on the mound. You've got to keep it at 1-0. You can't pinch hit just for the sake of pinch hitting, and then maybe the relief pitcher comes in and gives up a run or 2. You never know what you're going to get when you go to the bullpen. So I really like him giving Kevin Brown that opportunity to hit there. Plus, he had swung the bat pretty well. He almost got a base hit, in fact.
He got robbed. Eusebio has hit a double play, and he is singled. He's 1 for 2. Well, also his bullpen pitched 10 innings last night. Although I asked Leland about that today, he said probably just Jay Powell is the only guy he wants to give a night off to tonight. He said everybody else is available, including Rob Nem, his closer, even though Nem pitched 2 innings last night. Well, Kevin Brown, need we say more? That is his 10th strikeout. But he is trailing. Top of the order, Abbott, Renteria, Eisenreich, Sheffield, 4th if they can get to him when we come back. The ESPN Sunday Night Baseball Game of the Week is brought to you by Holiday Inn Hotels. They're spending $1 billion to make every Holiday Inn as good as the best Holiday Inn. From the Astrodome, John Miller, Joe Morgan here with you. I'm John Miller. This is Joe Morgan, and we're glad to have you with us. Next Sunday, Joe, we'll see a couple of our favorite friends. Paul Molitor of the Minnesota Twins, Joe Carter, the Blue Jays. They'll be playing indoors in Minneapolis next Sunday night.
Yeah, don't forget the second baseman, Knobloch.
Chuck Knobloch, yeah, always one of the favorites of Sunday Night Baseball because, I mean, he plays hard.
Right.
And he's good.
Baseman, too.
And he's good.
Right.
Yeah. In fact, it seemed to me Knobloch is from down here originally. All those future Hall of Fame second basemen seem to have a Texas thing in their background. John Miller along with native Texan Joe Morgan. The batter is Abbott, the leadoff man, and they really would like him to get on base here against Kile, but I don't know, Kile is in some kind of a groove right now. I mean, this guy is... Nobody's even... The hardest hit ball against him the last 3 innings was by Brown.
Now we see why in the first inning when Abbott reached base, they sacrificed with Renteria trying to get a run right away.
2-2. Look at that. We're getting him on the radar gun at 94 miles an hour, and it's the 8th inning. This is much more like the Darryl Kile of 1993, who made the All-Star team and won 15 games. Curveball got him swinging. The hammer. Strikeout number 5 for Kile. Well, we mentioned next Sunday, it'll be Joe Carter and the Toronto Blue Jays against Chuck Knobloch, Paul Molitor and the Minnesota Twins, 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific. And we hope that you will join us for that one. We haven't seen the American League for a while. And the young Carlos Delgado can hit him a mile. Roger Clemens now at that Toronto Ball Club. We'll see a lot of Jim Leland's old Pirates there. Carlos Garcia and Orlando Merced, both on that ball club now. And especially Garcia not doing that well.
Right, he's been struggling with the bat. In fact, they dropped him down in the order. He was hitting second most of the year, and they dropped him down a little bit, maybe try to take a little pressure off of him.
Blue Jays, by the way, beat the Twins today up at the Sky Dome, 1-0. Renteria drives one deep into center field. Derek Bell. Well, it's not as deep as it used to be, but it's still the wrong place to hit it in this ballpark. So 2 men are gone, and here is Eisenreich. This is a big man for Kile to get because he's got a 1-run lead. If Eisenreich reaches, then Gary Sheffield would have a chance to do some damage with a man on base. He'd rather face Sheffield leading it off in the 9th inning. Eisenreich chasing that high fastball. He is 0 for 3. Well, you see the 2 pitchers both doing a great job. Brown, in fact, I got him with 10 strikeouts now. No walks. And Kile, 5 strikeouts, 3 walks, but no runs, even more significantly. By the way, 10 strikeouts is the actual figure for Brown. But it was a double play, not turned, that led to the Astros run. When you get a great pitcher's duel, any kind of a tight ball game, so often it's a mistake that spells the difference between winning and losing. But all is not lost yet for the Marlins. And there's a curveball, strike 2. Remember, last night in this same ballpark against this same ball club, the Marlins were trailing in the 9th inning, in fact, by 2 runs last night, and they went on to win the ball game. There's the curveball, and Eisenreich fought it off.
And that's exactly what he did. He was completely fooled. He tried to check his swing, but he's probably lucky that he got a piece of it. Let's see if this pitch was a strike. No, he's lucky he got a piece of it because he was trying to check his swing right over the outside part of the plate and down.
Bagwell to Kile, and they keep Sheffield from coming up again. Nice play by Bagwell to rob Eisenreich of a hit.
Well, they made some fine plays behind him to end the inning. Last inning, it was the 3rd baseman. Now it's Bagwell.
1-0 Astros. It's Houston 1, Florida nothing. We go to the last of the 8th inning from the Astrodome. ESPN Sunday Night Baseball. And we have had the pitchers reign supreme in this ball game. Without question, Kevin Brown has just pitched close to a masterpiece, giving up only 1 run and 5 hits. He has 10 strikeouts with no walks. And yet, he is trailing in the ball game because Darryl Kile has thus far just been brilliant. He has pitched a masterpiece. And that is a ball. Well, Kevin Brown, in his 6 previous starts this year, had given up 1 earned run or less 5 times. And he won 3 of those games. And Konai takes it. Spires is out number 1. And Darryl Kile will come up.
Well, the only outing he had that was not typical was the one against the Colorado Rockies.
In Denver.
In Denver, and, you know, that's that's typical there.
Typical for everybody but Tom Glavine. Jim Leland. And look at this. His ball club at home versus on the road. And Leland says even that home record is deceiving because no matter where, they just haven't hit. Now, it looks like they've hit much better at home, but he said, well, they haven't hit in terms of scoring runs. Wherever they've played, it's been 3-2, 3-2, 2-1, night after night after night. Jim Leland trying to help his ball club right through it. But this would be real tough tonight in a rubber match against a good ball club to lose with your ace out there in a night when he was superb, as Brown has been.
And that's interesting because Larry Durker, who says he usually does not think about, you know, tomorrow's game before he gets there, but he said last night he really tried to win that game knowing that he was going to have to face Kevin Brown today and it was going to be a struggle. Sure, he didn't know that Darryl Kile was going to pitch as well as he has, but he knew that it was going to be a struggle going against Kevin Brown.
2-2 the count to Kile, who has struck out twice against Brown. Biggio is on deck. Well, you know, last night he used Hudek as the closer. He kind of alternates between Hudek and Wagner. Wagner's the number 1 guy, but Wagner closed the ball game Friday, so Hudek was the closer last night. And Hudek didn't have it. He blew the save. And along with what you're saying, Joe, he then went with Wagner in the tie ball game. Wagner went 1 2/3 innings here last night. Out number 2 as Abbott throws out Kile. 2 down. When you think of this Houston offense, you think of Biggio, Bagwell, and Bell, and they're the 3 big guys in the order. The killer bees, they call them here in Houston. But not tonight. 0 for 9, although Bagwell was the man that they did not double up to end the first inning. He then stole second after reaching on what proved to be a force play and scored on Luis Gonzalez base hit to left for the only run of the game.
6 strikeouts in 9 at-bats.
And 3 of them by Bell. Biggio is a tough man to keep off the base pass. Tonight he's grounded out and struck out twice. And there's a called strike.
John, let's go back to that double play they missed. We don't want to blame Abbott and say that it would have been turned if Castillo was there. It was one of those awkwardly hit balls off to the second base side.
Broken bat. Abbott. Nice play. And that ends the inning. Last chance for the Marlins. 9th inning, and the big guys are coming up. Sheffield, then Alou, and finally Bonilla. 1-0 Astros.
MCI takes us to San Francisco. Scoreless game to the 10th. The Reds score in an error. It's 1-0. Former Giant Jeff Brantley on the hill. Glenn Allen Hill in a serious slump coming into this game. Singles for his 2nd straight at bat. It falls in front of Lenny Harris. They snap their first 3-game losing streak of the year, and the Giants win it 2-1 in their last at bat. Back to John and Joe.
All right, thank you, Gary. Giants getting out of that losing streak. Now 18-10, still the early surprise team in the National League. The starters in that ball game, which was a great duel. Mike Morgan, the veteran, against Kirk Reeder, former Montreal Expos, pitched real well for the Giants. no scoring in that game until the 10th. Here is Gary Sheffield. No scoring in this game for the Marlins so far. And here we are in the 9th inning, and the bullpen is getting ready. Tom Martin, the left-hander. John Hudak, the right-hander. Gary Sheffield, well capable of tying this ball game all by himself. He has flied out deep to left center, popped out to first, and walked. Kile. That hit him. And he's got the padding there. So Sheffield reaches again. The only run of the ball game back in the very first inning with 1 out and a runner at first. This was a double play ball, but some confusion on the double clutch by Brown. Bagwell reached. Then he stole second base. And then with 2 down, Gonzalez singled him home. And that has held up as the only run of the game. Now Darryl Kile, who's had to be just superb just to even be in the ball game here with Kevin Brown. And so far he's gone him 1 better. And here is Moises Alou, second in the league in RBIs. The third, and got him at second. And Sheffield didn't think so.
He was out. Leland's going out, but he was out. I was surprised that Spires went to second base actually on the play, because normally that when you make sure 1, if he doesn't get him, it was a close play, but I think he did get him.
Well, Sheffield, who in addition to being a slugger, is a very fast runner. And he really hustled over to second base, but Spires' throw just did beat him with Biggio covering. And Moises Alou reaches on the force out at first base.
Well, this is a high chopper, and normally on this play you go to first base and make sure you get 1, but he goes to second base, and we can't see from that angle.
Bobby Bonilla, the hitter now. That would have been huge if they called him safe. Would have turned everything around.
Well, take a look here, and you can see very close, but it looked like Biggio had him. Biggio thought he did. It was very close, though.
And perhaps some of the frustration of the Marlins underachieving early on there for Sheffield. And Bonilla's got a base hit to right field. Alou stops at second. Now, keep in mind something we've mentioned earlier in the telecast. Kile is working on short rest. He's working with 3 days of rest because of the emergency in their pitching staff. And now here he is in the 9th inning of this ball game. And he's had to make big pitches all the way through in a tight ball game.
Well, I don't think he's pitched like he's working on short rest. I mean, he has thrown a lot of off-speed pitches. He's been able to throw strikes. He doesn't look like he's laboring out there. And this is how Dierker makes his decision, not on number of pitches. He said if a guy has good stuff, meaning his starter, he likes to leave him out there. And Dierker's starters have pitched more innings than anyone in the league because of that. He likes to leave his starters out there.
John Wehner is the pinch runner for Bonilla, representing the possible go-ahead run over at first base. Now, Kile has thrown 112 pitches in this game up till now. Jeff Conine, a tough hitter. Curveball, a strike. But, you know, before the game, Dierker said he had no problems with Kile working with 3 days rest. He said if he had 4 guys like Kile, he'd work in a 4-man rotation. But he said, no, I'm not saying I think Kyle's going to go out and pitch a shutout or something tonight. But he said, I thought he'd pitch. I thought he would pitch well. Well, he is pitching a shutout so far, and that may end it. No, they can't get the ball to second base. Lestache, in his haste to get the ball to Biggio to double up Moises Alou, saw the ball go awry. The Marlins are still alive. Lestache has been all over the field tonight.
You're right. He's done a great job of shortstop. This ball's hit toward the end of the bat. He doesn't get all of it. Lestache catches it, and now he tries to get rid of it very quickly. Can't, you know, find Biggio. Now watch right there. He tries the backhand. He knows if he takes his time, he's not going to be able to get a loose, so he had to hurry, and he just was not able to make a good throw.
2 down, and that leaves it to Greg Zahn. He has walked twice and struck out, and he was one of the heroes last night, fueling the comeback with a 9th inning home run. The curveball. Darryl Kile has pitched well this year, but with only one win, even though his ERA coming in was at 3.12. Looking for his first complete game of the year, and also looking for the Astros' first shutout. The pitcher's spot due up next, and Cliff Floyd has come out of the on-deck circle just in case. Alou, the possible tying run at second base, and he'll be off and running at the crack of the bat. Wainer, the possible go-ahead run at first. And that curveball is too high. One of the few with which he's missed.
If you're a hitter, I think you have to look for something off speed and try to make sure you make contact. I don't think you can go up there thinking he's going to give me a fastball down the middle.
Jim Leland wondering if there's another clutch hit from his young catcher. And the curveball is in there. Strike two called. Alou at second. Wainer at first. But the Marlins are down to their final strike. Darryl Kile has not pitched a shutout since 1993. His all-star season. Struck him out with a slider.
Well, I think you really have to tip your hat to Darryl Kile for being able to pitch as well as he did. When he found his curveball from the middle innings on, he was in complete control, and he was able to throw the breaking ball for a strike whenever he needed it.
So Darryl Kile, with his third career shutout in the major leagues, his first in 4 years, and he needed it. That's the only way he could have won this ball game.
Right, he had
against
to have
Kevin Brown.
Ball, and he comes back with this is the strikeout pitch, another curveball. This one's off the plate inside. He had thrown a strike with the pitch before that was a curveball, and there you see the strikeout.
So, a great matchup, as it turns out, and Kile is one better than Brown, the double play that the Marlins did not get, and that proved fatal. 1-0 Houston over Florida. Next Sunday night, we will greet you from the Metrodome as the Minnesota Twins take on the Toronto Blue Jays. That's 8 Eastern and 5 Pacific. Now stay tuned. Sports Center is coming up next. You'll have all the day's highlights in the world of sports. John Miller for Joe Morgan. Thanks for joining us tonight. We'll see you next Sunday. This has been a presentation of ESPN, the worldwide leader in sports. Good night, everyone.